All right, multiplying binomials. So we've already done some multiplication of polynomials, and we do distribute term by term. But multiplying binomials is a very important skill that we use to solve equations and simplify expressions and so on. And to get good at it, we basically want to identify what distributions produce which terms in the answer. So this is the key. So to do this, we're going to start multiplying um, and producing our answer, basically figuring out which terms in the answer are produced by which distributions. So the first distribution that we do, taking the first term, the 3x, multiplying it by the first term in the second binomial, and we know that that produces a 6x squared, and that's the only x squared term we're going to get. So it produces the first term in our answer. So we will do that distribution first. The next distribution is the last two terms, the 4 and the -3. That's actually the second distribution we want to do, and we know that when we multiply the constants with the last terms, we get the last term in our answer of the third term. There's no other distribution that gives us this, so -12 would be the last term in our answer. So the next two distributions are going to give us the middle term. And this is where the smile method comes in. So when I distribute the inside terms, the 4 and 2x, I get 8x. And if you notice, we multiply the outside terms and we get a -9x. These are both x terms. So the third distribution that we're going to do is to get the middle term by the two inside and outside distributions. So this would be a -x when we combine those two like terms. So we call it the smile method because, again, we're generating the distributions that give us the smile. All right, so let's use this, practice this method. Again, it's more of just distributing in a certain order. When we do this, um, we multiply two binomials. So here we have two binomials. The first distribution is just the first two terms, and that's going to give us the first term in our answer. We can just write y squared in our answer. The next distribution is the last two terms, and this is going to give us the last term in our answer. So 3 times 1 is a +3. So the middle term comes from multiplying the 3y and y times 1, which is y. Combining those together, we get the middle term, which is a +4y. So again, we're just trying to keep track of where the terms in our answer come from, which distributions come from that. So it's going to help us out later on when we talk about factoring. The second problem, first two terms, we'll do this distribution first. M times m is m squared. So the first term in my answer is m squared. The last two terms, this last 6 and -9 give us the last term in our answer. 6 times -9 is -54. And then the middle terms come from, or the middle term comes from 6m and a -9m. So those are like terms, and when we combine them, we get the middle term, -3m. All right, so I'm just going to scroll down a little bit so I can see this other two. So again, we'll start off. The first two terms give us 3a times 2a, which is a 6a squared. The last two terms, the next distribution we want to look at is the -1 times 2, which gives us a -2. And then the smile, the two distributions, -1 times 3a is -3a, 2a times 2 is 4a. And when I combine those two terms together, I get +a. Okay, the last example, we can even do this, it's as long as we have two binomial factors. So this is a binomial factor and another binomial factor. So again, we'll just start off with the middle or the first terms. 3a squared times a squared gives us the first term in our answer, which would be a 3a to the fourth. The last distribution All right, so the first two terms, we multiply those together. We get a 6a to the fourth as our first term. The last two terms, we multiply those together. Negative 7b times negative b is a positive 7b squared. In the middle two terms, then we have a negative 7b times a squared, or a squared b. And the outside terms, 3a squared times negative b is a negative 3a squared b. So again, those two middle are alike terms, and when we add them together and we combine those, we get a negative, we get a negative 10 a squared b. All right, so now moving on. Again, we're practicing multiplying binomials. Now what happens if we have expressions that have more than two group factors? So here we just want to rely on good problem structure to make sure we keep track. We can only multiply two factors at a time. So if you look at this first expression, we got a term outside times a binomial factor times another binomial factor. So what I'm going to do is keep the first term, the negative 2 times y, and then underneath that, I'm going to keep track of the trinomial factor that I get when I distribute. So again, the first two terms, y and 3y, is 3y squared. The last two, 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. And the middle terms come from a 9y and a negative 2y. So we have a 9y and a negative 2y, which is a positive 7y. All right, so once I multiplied the two binomials, now I can just distribute the negative 2y to each term to finish my multiplication. So negative 2y times 3y squared would be a negative 6y cubed. Negative 2y times 7y is a negative 14y squared. And negative 2y times negative 6 is a positive 12y. So again, we're just kind of using the vertical method to keep track of everything. So the next expression, f here, when I look at that, I'll just multiply again. It doesn't really matter which two you pick. I'll multiply the second two binomials together. Just going to rewrite the x plus 6 factor and then leave room for my answer, keep track of my answer as a factor. So again, the first two terms when I multiply gives me the first term, my answer, which is x squared. The last two terms give me the last term, my answer, which is a positive 8. And then when I smile, the negative 2x and a negative 4x gives me a negative 6x. All right, so now once we have that trinomial factor, I now need to distribute term by term like we did last section. So let me start off with the x term and distributing that to each of the terms. X times x squared is an x cubed. X times negative 6x is a negative 6x squared. And then x times 8 is positive 8x. So now I'm going to distribute the positive 6 through. 6 times x squared is a positive 6x squared. 6 times negative 6x is a negative 36x. And then 6 times 8 is 48. So now we can just combine like terms. We'll have an x cubed. The x squared terms disappear. I have a negative 36x and 8x is a negative 28x. And then I have plus 48. All right, so again, we want to get efficient at multiplying binomials. If we use the SMILE method, we'll remember which distributions give us which terms in our answer.